You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 36. Today I'll be talking to Alex Garant. Alright, so my name's Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairs.podcast.com, but by far the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, Art Affairs now has its own Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests, with a lot more to come as I get a feel for it. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. All right, so today's guest is artist Alex Garant. Alex is a pioneer of contemporary figurative op art. She creates portraits, mostly of women, using this incredibly unique superposition glitch effect to make it seem like parts of her subjects, most notably their eyes, are like vibrating or blurred, making them super hard to focus on. It's actually a pretty incredible sensation. And we talk about what she's hoping to accomplish with this technique on the show, as well as how she transitioned from a career in advertising to dedicating herself to her own art, her upcoming solo show at Bain Art Gallery in Australia, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Alex Garant. Alex, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's dive into your background a bit. And from what I've read, you were raised born and raised in Quebec City, which is not an area of the world that I've ever actually been to. But looking at the images, it looks extraordinarily beautiful. What was the area like where you grew up?
So I'm from Quebec City, which is part of French Canada. I think it's a great place to live. I really enjoy my time when I was there. Obviously, my entire family is still there. So, like my mom, my dad, my sisters, everybody's still there. And, what's funny is when you're in so much beauty, because Quebec City is beautiful. I mean, the buildings are beautiful. Yeah. The river is beautiful. Everything is just it's gorgeous. But when you live in it, you don't really realize it. I mean, you can pass, a beautiful castle every day and it's just like, oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, it's a hotel. Who cares, right? But obviously I think since I moved to Toronto, I've really learned to appreciate where I come from. So I care more about my hometown now than when I actually lived there, if it makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
Even when it comes to my family, I love my family, obviously. My family is everything to me. But it's something as when you move really far away, you miss your family so much more, even if you probably don't see them less. Right now it's a pandemic, obviously it's a bit different, but when you grow up, you don't see your parents every week. I didn't anyway. But I feel like now it's so much more than I'm far away, if it makes sense.
No, that's it. That's totally interesting. Just the distance give you a whole new perspective, I guess, and helps you to appreciate what you had even more.
Maybe it's because I'm getting older as well. I find the older I get, the more I appreciate what I had and what my upbringing was and everything. I have a lot of nostalgia, I guess.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. And when you were growing up, your mother was actually an artist as well. What kind of art did she create?
Oh yeah, so she did a lot of acrylic when I was growing up. She did some classes in graphic design when she was young. And it was really an amazing thing because I think she still wanted to create when I was young. She had the dream of being an artist. And so she would do a lot of drawing, and then I would come back from school, and then she would actually let me color her drawings, which for me was the best experience ever. So she would draw something with a pencil, and then she would get wax pastels out, and I was allowed to color it. And to me, it's just the best memory of me coloring her drawings, because in my head, like, it was like the best drawings I ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate because I was always surrounded by art supplies and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And you got started pretty young. Was it that experience that served as an inspiration for you? Just seeing your mother really, be a creative type and having you come in to help her, did that spark your own interest in art?
I guess so. It's kind of funny because it is a question that people ask, like, when did you start really want to be an artist? And I think it's something that was just naturally part of my life from a really young age. Like, I just wanted to draw. I just wanted to paint. It's just something I wanted to do. My parents did enroll me in my first oil painting class when I was like 7 or 8. And I actually have my first oil painting here in my studio.
Oh, nice.
I think I was 9. So I still have it. So I think they were really kind of pushing my interest, which is a great thing, to a level that was almost unhealthy, because when it was time to go to college, I was like, Mom, maybe I want to be a doctor. And she's like, no, you're going to art school. I was like, oh, okay.
Wow, that's like an opposite experience from what I hear from most people. Like, a lot of people, like Ken a couple episodes ago, he was like, he wanted to be an artist, but they pushed him into engineering and more of so it seems like it's flipped.
Yeah, it was really funny because to me, school was really easy. I just absorbed stuff really easily. So I thought, oh, maybe something like science could be interesting because I actually enjoyed math. But then my mom was like, no, you were born to be an artist. Embrace it. And I was like, okay. So here we are.
Do you think that she was in a way like living through you in that sense? Like, helping you kind of accomplish some of the dreams that she may have had?
Probably. I mean, I had so many careers though between art school and when I actually decided to do art full time. So it wasn't, even if that was the goal, maybe from my parents and even me when I was younger. I mean, life is so twisted in a way that it brings you all kind of places first before you actually find the right way. So, yeah, I mean, maybe she was living her dreams through me, probably. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't want to overanalyze it because now I'm going to have to call her and have a big conversation with her.
Well, so you when you did go to school, you went to, and I'm going to completely butcher the pronunciation, but it's Notre Dame des Foix. Is that is that close?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Yep.
And why that school specifically? Like, why did you choose there?
So I, once again, in Quebec City, I think the back in the day, so the school system works a little bit differently in Quebec, or in Canada, actually. But in Quebec, you do your elementary school, you do your high school, then you must go to college before you go to university.
Oh, wow.
So the program I did was called, it's Cégep, which is the equivalent of college, I guess, for English Canada and the US. But when I wanted to go to college, when it was time to go to college, I chose between 2 schools that offered visual arts. And this one just had a program that I liked better. And also I knew some people that went to that college.
Okay.
So when you go there, you're 17 years old. So when you have the choice between 2 colleges, I'm like, I'm going to go to the one where I know people. So I'm not going to say a big story like the program was exceptional. It's just, no, I was 17. I was scared to go to college for the first time. And I picked the school where I knew people.
For sure. What was your focus while you were there?
So the program was called Visual Arts. And so that was was it the end of 99, early 2000? So that was few years ago, few minutes ago. And there was a bunch of classes. So you get to experience all kind of materials. So you had a watercolor class, you had a oil painting class, you had a sculpture class, you also had architecture and also digital media, which I believe back in the day was version 1 of Illustrator. So it was really, really basic, but we did have a computer class. So there was a little bit of kind of everything, a bit of art business. So it was very technical. Like I can't say that it's the type of school that, you leave the art program and you're ready to enter the art world or even the work world. So it was more something like a big artsy experience.
Okay. Do you think that it was a valuable experience?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a strong believer in art school for a few reasons. One, I think there is some kind of shortcut to art school because you are pushed to produce so much. I mean, I was in the art world 40 hours a week for school alone, and then you had your homework and all this stuff. So you have no choice but to create. So that you put that in 2 or 3 years, it's a very intense art experience where you get to try so many different things compared to if you do it on your own, which is a great way to do it as well, but it can take you 10 years to get there, to get to experience everything. I also think that for college, it's a big social experience. College is like a mini society, right? So for the first time, you are sitting next to people that are also the artsy kids. Because, when you're in high school, you're the art kid. You're the one that draw. You're the weird kid with the notepad. But when you get to college, everybody's like that. Everybody's the art kid. So it's kind of the big social experiment of the first time you're able to talk about art and being able to actually express your passion with like-minded people. So I think it's a learning experience in that sense as well, which it's a big social learning curve for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so you graduated there in 2001. And from what I can tell from your CV, you immediately went to Montreal to study special effects makeup. Do I got that right?
Yeah, no.
So how did you take an interest in special effects makeup?
Yeah, that's a very, you really studied your stuff because it's a very obscure thing about me. So like I said, art school is the art school I went to was a great art experiment. But after that, you're not really ready to get any type of job and you're not really ready to be a full-time artist. It's not practical in that sense. So after I'm like, well, I need to work because I moved out of my parents' place when I was 17. So I need to bring money in. I need to pay my rent. So I was like, I could do some makeup and get paid for that and still stay artsy. So then I went to Montreal for a year or so and just did special effect and, body paintings and, all kind of stuff like that. So I did that for a while after as well. Fun fact, after that, I also worked as a clown for kids' birthday parties.
I read you were a clown. I was going to ask you about that. How did that happen? How did you get into that?
Well, so after obviously the art degrees, that doesn't get you a real job right away. And then the makeup school, it's an easy job. I'm like, I'm going to do face paint for kids. So I had a few good gigs. I did kids' birthday parties. I did some gigs at a museum, at summer festivals. So I was just doing face painting for kids. And I was hired as a clown. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun.
How long did you do that?
I don't know, maybe a couple of years. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was great.
Very cool. So at some point you moved to Toronto. What led to the decision to move there?
So once again, I had so many different jobs. So after the whole clown thing, I decided I wanted to learn English. So then I moved to Seattle to be a nanny.
Okay.
So I was a nanny for a year so I could learn English at the same time. And then when I came back to Quebec City, because then I was bilingual, which is pretty rare when you're in Quebec City, I got a job as a flight attendant. And then they were like, you're a flight attendant. Well, now you're going to be based in Toronto. So then I moved to Toronto to be based at the Toronto airport as a French flight attendant.
Okay.
And then I stayed after I stopped being a flight attendant.
How have you liked living there? How do you like that's a big city, right?
It is a big city. There's 7 million people that live here. Toronto is massive. I love it. I love that it's busy. Obviously, I'm talking pre-COVID universe. Right now, it's the end of the world, like everywhere else. But yeah, it's very busy. There's a lot of creative people. I find there's a lot of creativity just in the type of industry. The movie industry is really big here. So I think I just enjoy the type of people that live here. I have like the best art friends in Toronto. And yeah, I love it for that, really, more than just for the buildings, because yeah.
At some point, you made your way into marketing, and from what I can tell, you worked for Walmart for a bit, and then worked for a long period of time for a magazine, I believe, called CPA Canada. I guess, how did you get into marketing? What was your entrance into that, and what kind of work were you doing for them?
Wow, you really studied my CV. I'm impressed. You're like the best stalker ever. It's when I stopped being a flight attendant, I got an entry-level job at Walmart head office working in communication, and I just kept getting promoted. So then I moved to the marketing department because I guess I had ideas that they could use. And then after that, I moved and I sold restaurant franchises. So I went in sales for a bit. And then I became marketing manager for that place. And then I moved to CPA Canada, which is the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada. And I worked for their magazines for 8 years in advertising sales. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And what, as far as like the nature of the work there, was it design related stuff, or was it more just kind of planning out marketing strategies?
Yeah, it was a suit job,
Okay.
meaning marketing, budget planning, advertising sales, all this good stuff. It was a very, very busy, serious, big deal corporate job. Big numbers, big clients, lots of meetings, pretending I was very serious all the time. It was very interesting, but it did give me so many opportunities when it comes to art, because the whole time that I was doing that, I was just doing art on the side, right? So it was a great income because Toronto is an expensive city. So it was basically letting me afford good art supplies and stuff like that. So it was an interesting journey for sure.
So throughout all these different jobs, you clown, flight attendant, and then into marketing, how are you able to make time, or were you able to make time for your own painting and or I guess develop and grow your own craft?
So it was obviously more, the big part of my life when art was almost an afterthought, meaning I was really busy with work like everybody else. The whole like rat race thing where you just get home, you're just tired. But it was always there in a way that can be super lazy and, how could I say, just like an afterthought, meaning like I would be doodling all the time, or when I would get at home at night, if I was watching TV, I would get like, an notepad and start just drawing. So I wasn't as committed to my practice, but I was always drawing anyway, like nonstop. It's always a mind numbing experience for me where like, you just do, when you're on the phone and you just do doodles, like it was always like that. Like I would be on the phone with clients and I would be doodling, on a piece of paper. So it was just always there. I was not as committed as I am now, obviously, to art as a career back then. I find that sometimes in life, you just let life takes you places. And I often compare that to, you're floating on a river on a raft and you just let the river decide where it takes you. And that's kind of how I was living my life back then. I was just on the raft, and I wasn't really making active decision for my life. I was just letting the river takes me wherever and be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. That makes sense. So my passions were kind of just waiting for me on the side of that rivers, and it was just kind of passing by for a while.
Yeah, no doubt. And then 2012 happened, and that's when you really kind of started to reevaluate and refocus your life following, you recovering from a heart attack. So tell me about that. I mean, I think you were like 30 at that point. What on earth are you doing having a heart attack so young? Like, tell me about that. Is there some history of that in your family? Like,
there's no history of that. What I like to say is, when you buy any type of product and like a computer or even your phone, and then the warranty expires, and then the day after your warranty expires, it just dies. It's like, oh, of course my computer doesn't work. The warranty just expired. I said, that's what happened to me. I turned 30 and my warranty expired. And that was it. But seriously, on a serious note, there's no history. What caused it is most likely a virus. So they're not 100% sure. They think a virus similar to like strep entered my bloodstream and infected my heart and infected the sac around the heart. And I ended up with myocarditis and pericarditis, which is an infection of the heart. Unfortunately, I did not know that I had that. And what ended up happening is I had a crazy fever. And the day after the night when I was starting 30, I just woke up in the middle of the night and I just knew I was dying. Like I woke up and I'm like, I need to go to the hospital. I'm dying. Like I just knew that this is what death feels like.
Wow, that's scary.
And so it was just a weird freak accident, I guess. And after that, it was just a long recovery, emotionally and physically.
For sure. No, I can imagine how low that can be. I mean, but recovering from that, which I'm sure was an enormous struggle, coming out of the other side is when you really started to kind of refocus your life and your passions and decided to really pursue your art more seriously. So I guess what brought you to that decision? Like what was it about that event in your life that triggered that change in direction?
So I'm going to sound like a giant bag of cliches right now, but when I was at the hospital, and I wasn't sure which way it's going to go because my heart wasn't stable. I was plugged on a bunch of machine. And, like I said, I didn't know if I was even going to recover for a moment there. And I asked a friend to bring me my computer at the hospital because, that's the stuff you think about. But I started typing a letter of all the things that I should have done with my life that I didn't do. So this big moment of I have no regrets on all the stuff I've done, good or bad, but I have tons of regrets on stuff that I didn't do or didn't take the time to do. And on top of the list was art. I'm like, I know art is my passion. Art should have been my life. And after that, it was just, that was it. I'm like, I'm committing to it. I'm going to live it. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to make that my life. And that was just it. At that moment, I really made the decision that creation would be my goal in life.
Do you think you ever would have kind of come to that decision had you not had such a serious health scare?
I would like to think I would have, but I don't think I would have. I was so deep into, like I said before, the rat race, and you getting promoted and you making a ridiculous amount of money, and then you start thinking that more money will be more fulfillment, and you buy more stuff and you get more things, and you're still hunting that happiness. But everybody's telling you that if you have a better job, if you make more money, if you have a nicer house, this is how you're going to reach that happiness level. And it's really hard to kind of detox from that mentality.
Right.
And I don't think I would have. I mean, I might way later, but I don't think it would have been with the same level of intensity that I had right after the heart attack. Because after that experience, everything was so intense. I became very intense. I had no shame about nothing. I did not want to apologize about anything. I was not self-conscious about anything anymore. I wasn't shy anymore. I wasn't like, there was like nothing holding me back. So it's more than just changing the motivation. It's also completely changing who you are as a person.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. And so, coming to that decision, I'm sure was a big deal, but then actually executing it, how did that happen? Because I think you were still working for CPA Canada for a few years after that until like 2018. So how did that transition happen? Did you just start working longer hours and focusing more and then sort of transition away from it? Or how did that happen?
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that actually which might seem strange, but one of the things that kind of got cut from my life was a lot of social hours. Instead of hanging out with friends after work, I decided to just work in my studio. So it's something like, I mean, we only have so many hours in a day. So I decided to, go out less and see a bit less people, choose who I hang out with, who I keep in my life, make the active decision, who am I keeping in my life, and then spend those hours just creating. So I would work an 8 to 5, then I would have dinner, and then by 7 p.m. I would start creating until 10 or 11 every single night. And during the weekend, I would do an 8 or 9 hour day painting as well. So it was just full on commitment to the artist lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. How did you start getting your work, I guess, noticed by galleries? Like and start building, some of those connections?
So after the heart attack, like I said, it kind of changed where I did not have any shame or I wasn't self-conscious about anything. It's a really strange thing. So before that, when I was creating art, I was always like, well, it's not good enough. I will apply to gallery when my next piece is good enough. Oh, you know what? The next collection will be good enough. But then I would never get to the point where I was satisfied. And until I was satisfied, I did not want to approach galleries. So, after the heart attack, because, we're living a shameless life, I just decided that it doesn't matter. I can just send all my work to as many galleries, and the worst thing that's going to happen is that they're going to say no.
Right.
So I did not have that fear anymore of being rejected. It didn't process anymore, So that's what I did. I just created this massive list of galleries that I liked and galleries that were showing artists that I love. And I send them email. I would look on their website, if you can submit, if you can apply, if they have open calls. And then I would have a little Excel spreadsheet because I'm very organized. And then I would go, okay, on this date, I send those paintings and I said this thing. And I would just go down my list and just apply to as many places as possible if I thought they were a good fit. And I got a lot of no's when I started. A lot of no's. You're not ready. We don't think it's a good fit. Until one local gallery here in Toronto right away said, oh, we'll give you a solo. And I was like, yay.
Nice.
And started there. And often once you get in one gallery, you become a bit more credible. It's just the way it works, I guess. And once you show at one place, like someone else might be more open because there's some kind of validation of proof of concept behind your name. And then it just went from there.
How did you stay, I guess, motivated and not get discouraged by the no's? Because like you said, and this is the case with a lot of people, and I don't think it's unique for you. A lot of people, when they're starting out, you get a whole pile of no's. But how do you stay motivated and kind of continue on like you did?
I often say when you're an artist, it's a fine balance between feeling like shit about your work and thinking you're the shit. So excuse my French, but it's that fine balance between being super cocky and really thinking that your work is worth nothing. And if you can find that balance in between, you can just catch those moments where, oh yeah, it doesn't matter because I'm good enough, So if you can catch those little moments sprinkled in your life where you think that you're everything, this is when you have to act. This is when you're like, oh, I feel really good at my work today. I'm going to apply everywhere. And the no's are, it is what it is. And the way you have to think about it is more about fit than rejection. So you just have to say, well, eventually I'll find the gallery or the collectors that understand my visual language, that understand my visual voice. And once you can create that niche of galleries and you can build up that niche of collectors that understand you as an artist, I think you feel a lot better about your work, and you understand that a no is just about fit more than anything else.
I really like the way that that you just said that. I mean, because it's like it changes what the goal is. It's not to change your work to be more approachable by everybody, but it's more of a searching activity to find the right niche to fit your work that is what it is into. Mm-hmm. So I like that perspective. So 2012 to 2018, you were kind of doing both. At 2018, was that the point where you gave up the day job work completely?
Yeah. So I got to a point where I kept getting promoted, and which is awesome, and I kept making more money to a point where it was kind of obscene. And to me, but I was burning out, and I was burning out big time. Like I'm talking, I was having chest pain, and for me, that's very scary. So I started having chest pain again. I started having eczema on my arm, which, all those things that are stress related that was just manifesting through my body. And because of my past experience, it got really scary to see that my body was reacting so much to my emotional and mental health. So I was really burning out. It was a busy job. It was a big job. And on top of that, I was doing art almost full time. I was booking a lot of gallery shows, and I had crazy deadlines. And I ended up working, the day job 40 hours a week, plus doing, 5 hours a night until midnight every night on my art, and wow. 12 hours a day during the weekend. It was just never ending. And I reached a point where something happened at my corporate job where I was not happy with a specific conversation. And I just walked in there and be like, I'm out.
I'm done.
And I knew that enough art shows and gallery commitment for 1 year out that I could afford, if you want, to just leave the corporate job, because I'm a very, very rational thinker when it comes to finances, I guess. I'm very down to earth, and it is a big part of being a full-time artist. It is like running a small business, right? So I had to be sure that it makes sense for me financially as well. So I was very careful putting money aside while I was doing the corporate job to be like, well, if I switch to art full-time, I have enough money to pay my rent for a year, for example. And then if art doesn't work, then I have a bit of money aside and then I can bounce back. So I had a plan. I just wasn't ready to pull the plug yet until one thing happened. And then I was just like, everything is in place. The plan was there. The finances were set. I had a good place to live. I had shows scheduled. So I was just waiting for basically, we say the straw that breaks the camel's back, I guess. I was just waiting for that last little thing. And when that happened, I was like, yeah, I'm giving you my 2 weeks and I'm out.
Okay. So it's something you had been preparing for a while then, right?
Yeah. It's something where, since the heart attack, that was always the plan. It took a little while to get there, but everything I was doing was in preparation of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's dive into your work for a bit. And you've really become effectively a pioneer of what you call contemporary figurative op art. But it didn't really start out like what you're doing now. I've been looking at a lot of your work, from early work to the later work, and your early work was different. You could definitely see the lineage, like how you got from point A to point B, but you started out more focused on symmetry, from what I could tell. Having these pieces where you had vertical mirroring effects, where you had kind of almost like a Siamese twin type of a thing, and then you had the horizontal mirroring of eyes and stuff like that. So it was definitely more symmetry focused, rather more so than what you're doing today. So I guess what was your initial interest in symmetry?
Even if I look at my really early works from like art school, like we talked about, my early work from art school, there's some stuff that to me are aesthetically pleasing, and one of them is symmetry. I like things to be symmetrical. It's just how, like, not necessarily in my house, but if I create something, to me, there's a better structure to the composition if it's symmetrical. So it only started from my personal taste level and just my quest for a great aesthetic. Even in my early work, there's a lot of play on patterns and symmetry and duplicating elements. That's something that just naturally comes back in my work. It's one of those things where even if I try not to do it, I would create a character like on a sketch and I'd be like, but what if I did the same on the other side? And then my brain is so satisfied by it. So it's that search of, that satisfaction where the image makes sense for you. So that's kind of how it started. And, like you said, even at the beginning, when I started showing galleries, my work was a lot more illustrative, and it just kind of slowly transitioned. And I'm sure if you take all the pieces I ever done one next to another, you could kind of see a weird visual stories of the whole evolution, how it happened. But yeah, like the whole symmetry thing was just something that was just naturally attractive to me. And then from there, duplicating with transparency was a complete analog experiment where I was just playing with sketches and multiple pieces of paper. And it was a very tangible experiment where I was playing with pieces of paper in my studio. And I got that transparency effect while I was putting a transparent paper over another sketch. And that's just how it started. So wow. Even if a lot of people refer to it as glitch art, it's kind of something that's been going around. It's actually not digitally inspired at the beginning. It really from a very analog experiment with pieces of paper in my studio. But that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And definitely a big focus for that style that you've developed are the eyes. Like that's the thing that you focus on the most, it seems. Why the eyes? Like what's so special, or why specifically the eyes?
To me, the eyes is just part of the storytelling. So because I do a lot of portraits, I want people to create a connection with the characters that I'm painting. And as human beings, one of the way we connect with others is through eye contact. And to be able to create something that make the viewer chase that eye contact is kind of the way I'm trying to create the image. So I want the viewer to try to connect with the character that I painted. So obviously the eyes are the most straightforward way to do it and create that experience.
For sure. And I know that identity is one of the big themes that you kind of deal with a lot, having to do with like the duality or multiplicity of identity and how the interplay between a person's kind of inner self and their outward self. I guess, why do you think that's become such a big focus for you?
I think it just comes from self-analysis. I'm someone that can be very outgoing, very loud, very out there. And there is part of me that is almost shy in a way, or a bit more of an introvert. So I do realize when I analyze my own behaviors, that there is a persona that I created for outsiders, and there is a persona that I have for myself or people that I'm really, really close to. So to me, my two personas are fairly close to one another, but I can see in other people that there's almost a battles on who they're trying to project and who their true self are. And especially these days in the world of social media, it's such a common stories of, you have a perfect life on social media, you're an influencer, you're always having fun, all this stuff. And then you can be miserable at home, right? So this juxtaposition to me is very, very interesting, that human duality between the image that we're projecting and who we truly are. And actually the person that we truly are is probably somewhere in between if we really had to define ourselves. So it's a concept that I really like to chase in my painting. And I often try to reflect on the innocence of that character. So this is why I don't paint a lot of people smiling or anything like that. I really like to show that our inner self is often way more innocent and naive and close to the child in us than anything else.
Interesting. No, and I definitely know what you mean. And I think, the duality, I think, is something that is just natural. I think it's always been there, because you're different people with your parents than you might be with your friends, than you might be with your work colleagues or whatever. So I think that's just been a natural part of being a human in general. But to your point, I think the social media has just exaggerated that by like tenfold, because people are now putting on a performance, to show the rest of the world, which could be a very different picture. So that's sort of the macro level overarching themes that you're dealing with. But I'm also curious, like at the individual level, do your individual subjects tend to have stories themselves, like in your mind?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, I almost feel like I'm writing their own stories by painting them. There are models that I use that are actual person. I do have models that, before COVID, I had models that comes to my studio and I can take reference photos. In the past few years, I find myself sometimes creating people. So using multiple references and combining them and kind of creating my own human beings. And it almost brings another level of like, I'm creating a human beings, and the human that I'm creating also has multiple personas and multiple selves. So once again, even if we knew the entire background of one of the model I'm using, I never want to impose my own stories to the viewers or the people that look at my work, because people connect for different reasons. When people look at art, they often project a lot of themselves in the art they're looking at. So that's why they identify with art differently. So because what I do is portrait, I just want to let the viewers project their own stories and get whatever they want back from it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And you were talking earlier about the hoping to make a connection when we were talking about the importance of eyes in your work and how that's the easiest way to kind of create a connection with the viewer. What about the physical sensation? Like, does the physical sensation of the viewer play into what you're trying to achieve? There's obviously the conceptual side and the emotional connection that we were talking about. But like, as far as how a person's eyes and brain try to naturally make sense of what they're seeing, just as part of just evolution and how our brains work. Do you ever think about that and then creating that sort of experience that could initially be disorienting and then causing them to kind of slow down and look at it?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's the part of me that is, first, it's the mad scientist in me. And second, it's also to embrace something that's a bit more quirky and fun. So I don't think art should only be beautiful and pretty. I think sometimes art should just be fun to look at, and art should just be an experience, and it should be, hey, I feel something, I hate it, but it was something. Like, I don't mind if people look at my work and say, I feel dizzy. I got people telling me, oh, I look at it, I want to puke. Like, people react different ways. And you know what? I embrace it all because you felt something and you had an experience. And I don't want to take anything away from those people's experiences. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think it's fun. Like, I don't think everything should be that serious and that deep all the time. I think it's great to inject some depth into what you're doing, but I think sometimes we just need to embrace, like I said, quirkiness or something that is just silly experience. And I'm okay if people have this type of connection with my work. I embrace it.
It's pretty, I mean, it's a pretty remarkable thing to me, just how you're able to create that effect. Because obviously this last week I've been looking at a lot of your work. And so it's such a fascinating sensation. And so we got to this point from your initial interest in symmetry that sort of evolved, kind of naturally and organically into what you're making today. How do you see your current style possibly evolving in the future? Like, so, you're obviously not static and it's continuing to evolve. So are there ways in which you think you might explore taking it in a different direction or new directions?
So my quest is often based on my technical abilities. That's what I like to chase personally. I like to push technique and find a way to render what's in my mind better and better and better. So as an artist, that's my personal quest. I'm really driven when it comes to the technical aspect of things. When it comes to just the pure visual result of my little quest, I think I want to push transparency more and more. And one of the challenges that I love on a personal level is that I work wet on wet. So I don't glaze. So I'm trying to create transparency without glazing. And to me, it's just the most fascinating process ever. But I don't know if I'm getting too much into full-on art or artist geekiness when I'm like, ooh, could we create a transparency effect without glazing? Like, it almost get too technical. And I'm not sure if people are truly interested in that. But to me, as an artist, that's kind of my personal quest. And I think that quest will actually lead to my upcoming pieces and will result in an evolution when it comes to the end product. But what drives it is really this weird technical obsession that I have.
No, I think it's fascinating because I was definitely going to get into that. It's a technique called alla prima, which is wet on wet. And yeah, to your point, I never really thought about that. Like, how do you even accomplish transparency when you're not, like, everybody that I've talked to that does, uses transparency in their work, it's always done through glazing, but you're not doing that. So that's fascinating to me. I guess with this process, or with this technique rather, this wet on wet, does that mean that you're doing everything at the same time? Like, you're pretty much accomplishing the whole visual aesthetic at once, and not doing like multiple passes?
Right. So it's usually when people think alla prima, they really think of like one painting done in 1 hour. Because of my process and my concepts are very calculated, because they're very calculated, the way I found, which is to me the most efficient way to do it, is to do one section at a time. So if I'm starting a painting, I will just start, let's say, just half the face. So I will not put my paint everywhere. I'll do wet on wet on half a face. And then if, I have to go to bed because sometimes, we must sleep. I will not touch that part again. So the day after, I will do another, let's say 10 hours, and I will be doing, the other half, or like a shoulder or a hand, whatever. So I'll pick a section and that will be my goal for the day. So this entire section is done wet on wet, and then all those puzzle pieces kind of come together at the end. But I really don't glaze. I don't glaze. I'm not great at it. So I just stick to what works for me. And
sure. Has that always been your process? Is that always the way that you've worked?
Yeah, I think so. I think so because I have to think about it. I know I experimented with glazes. And I even, a few years ago, tried to do a few grisailles under my painting, just a gray base. I tried different method, but I find that this is the one that I don't want to say comfortable because it's always a challenge, but it's the one that I enjoy the most. And, if you're going to do art full time, just stick to what you love. That's, don't fight it. Just embrace what you love doing.
What about oil itself? Like, what is it about oil as a medium that you prefer over other types of paints?
I think because of the way I work, I just love that you can put your paint down and you can keep sculpting it. That's how I call it. I say sculpting because even if it's 2D, you just can keep moving it around until you have the image that you want. And you can also kind of build it up. Even if it's wet on wet, you can keep adding and changing the tones. I just enjoy its flexibility more than anything else.
So diving a little bit more into your process, how do the concepts for your pieces originate? Do you do a lot of sketches, or does it start with like a modeling session that like sparks an idea, or how does your process begin?
That's a good question because there's different way that it can kind of happen. I do have a database of images on my computer. So I have all the reference pictures that I took from all the different models saved in one folder. So that's great because it's a reference database that you can just keep going to and access. So I really recommend everybody to do that because it's kind of a lifesaver, especially these days where we can't take new reference photos. And sometimes I just know, okay, I need to create a new piece. So sometimes it'll start from the model. So I'll go through my database. I'll choose a reference pictures that I really like and go from there. But sometimes I have to say inspiration is a bit of a mystery even to me. And I'll be in the shower washing my hair and suddenly I have a very, very clear picture of my next painting. Like I literally have a flash and it's an idea like, ooh, I'm going to use this color and I'm going to do this. And it just kind of happened on its own, like magic. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like sometimes it's just magic. And sometimes I do a lot of mental exercises before I go to bed. I do try to meditate a little bit before bed just to, reset and, calm down. And, often I paint in my head, if it makes sense. I was talking about that to another artist who told me that he was doing that. And I was so happy that I wasn't the only one. I'm like, yeah, I totally paint a full painting in my head before bedtime. So I go to bed, I close my eyes, and I literally just paint a piece in my head where like, I see myself like, oh, I'll grab this brush and I'll do this. And if it's something I like, I'll grab a notebook next to my bed and I will just do a quick stick figure image of, this color, this color. Sometimes it's just a color combination. Sometimes it's just a shape. It's like, oh, this is good. And I just write it down. And then I'll do a full sketch, when I start working. But yeah.
Do you ever wake up the next morning and wonder what the hell you drew? Like what was I thinking?
I do have some notes on my phone. Sometimes I have an idea. I'm just hanging out with my boyfriend. I'm like, ooh, art idea. He's like, right now? I'm like, yes. So I grab my phone. I just go in my note and do a little doodle. And yes, 2 days after I look at it, I'm like, it seems so genius at the time. And now I have no idea. I'm like, half a blue circle? That was my genius idea.
No, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I mean, I'm in software, and I've had some of the most like profound ideas in the shower or on the elliptical machine, and I just have to stop and just run and write it down real quick, and then whether or not I actually remember what it was, days later, who knows. So you mentioned modeling, the photo shoots that you do to gather reference photos. Are the people that you photograph, like your models, are they friends? Are they people that you know? Or is it just people that you've hired, sort of like professional models?
Yeah, it's usually people that I hired. I mean, I want to pay all my models if they come and spend time, like they're busy people as well. So yeah, usually I would hire a model to come for, let's say, like 1 hour in the studio, and I would take 200 pictures. So I'll take all the angles, different lighting. I literally make them sit on a chair and turn from left to right slowly. And I just snap, like the entire rotation, just to build that database. So I have paid models and hired models. And sometimes I had people that reach out to me via social media. They're like, oh, I would love to model for you. So I got some reference photos like that as well in the past. But I found that most of my models, I don't think I have a lot of actual close friends that I used as models. Not sure why. I think it just kind of happened like that, or I think it's more an efficiency way. You know, when you ask a favor for a friend, it could take 3 months before it happened.
Yeah.
If I pay someone for an hour to come to my studio tomorrow, they'll be there. So I think sometimes it's more about that.
No, that's interesting. I kind of just wondered if knowing the person had any kind of impact, you know, whether or not it makes it a more, you know, rich backstory or whatever.
I think it would be harder, to be honest, because I think I would project too much of what I know of that person in it. Or I think I would be overly concerned about being very accurate, or be sure that, oh, you know what, I know what this person looks like. It needs to look exactly like them. As when I work with models, they really become, without calling them object, I don't want to objectify anyone, but they really become like shapes and colors and all this stuff. And they really merge with the artistry of it all. Instead of really trying to paint someone I know, where I would be focusing too much on trying to make them look like the person I know.
Sure. When you're going into a photo shoot, do you have an idea of like specific poses that you're looking for, or specific outfits, or do you sort of just take as many photos as you can and kind of curate it later?
Yeah, that's usually what I do. I ask my models just to wear usually just a super simple tank top. And the clothing is added later. So I like to say that I play dress up on, sometimes I'll do a little digital sketch before. So I will actually, you know, find clothing that I like, even like photos of vintage clothing. And I totally play dress up. So I'll take the picture of the models that I have and I'll dress them up with different pictures that I like. Or even sometimes it's just, I'll just put some red on there to see what it's going to look like. But yeah, it's a completely different phase of the whole sketching process.
Okay. And so once you do have a good set of photos, how do the initial compositions come together? Do you do like digital compositions, or do you sketch out the drawing first? Or
Yes. Once again, this is kind of something that varies from times to times. I find that I do a lot of actual sketching in a sketchbook, especially to decide composition. So often I won't do any details in the face or anything like that. I will actually just do a composition in the sketchbook. Then I'll do a digital collage or whole scrapbook experiment where like I dress them up and I found a bunch of different reference photos that I like. And often I will then do a sketch based on that. So there's quite a different step until I'm really satisfied. So often I'll do a regular sketch for composition and just my basic idea, digitally alter my references, and then redo a sketch based on my altered references. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense, just the iterations of it. Do you use any kind of like special tools, like glasses or anything that helps you accomplish that superposition effect? Because I imagine that is like super difficult to get right. And I guess, are there tools that help you with that?
Yeah, I'm a strong believer in, and this is super taboo in the art world, and you're going to get a lot of angry comments about it, but I'm a strong believer in my projector. I use a projector to make my sketch bigger on a canvas, because first, it's a time saver. I could do the grid method in 6 hours and end up in the same result as my projector that I do in 1 hour. So it's more about being efficient, but also because the type of art that I do is so calculated, there's a very specific recipe, if you want, to it. I really want to be exact with my measurements. So I find that using a projector is just the best way to be sure that everything is as symmetrical and exact as possible. So I'll take my sketch. I actually have I don't even have a digital projector. I have an opaque projector, which is, the one with the light that project. So actually I have one that's big enough to fit my entire sketchbook. So I can put my sketchbook in the projector and then I can just make it bigger on a canvas. It's just about being efficient. It's just taking a tiny sketch and make it bigger in an hour, and be sure that you're respecting those, gaps and measurements that really make sense for the effect to be effective.
And so the initial sketch, does that have the super precise kind of superposition effect in the sketch itself?
So I used to use my projector and project my sketch twice.
Okay.
So I used to draw and then project it and draw it again. In the past year or so, I want to be a bit more specific and be really sure of the effect before I put it on canvas. So I do have the tendency now to just do a double sketch on paper and then project that already as a double. I find that I'm more confident in the end result.
Very cool. Do you have a dedicated studio space outside of your home?
Yes. Well, actually, before I quit the corporate job, I bought a house. Not cash. It's not paid for. I wish. People think I really had a grand life. I wasn't that grand. So I have a small house, but I use one of the guest bedroom. One is a guest bedroom. The other one is an art studio. So I use it as a studio, but I have to say, because I run everything from my house, my online shop is from my house, like prints, material, shipping, everything is done here. The entire house is basically
your studio.
A studio. And it's, the room upstairs doesn't have a big window. It's a tiny little room. I think it's like 8 by 10. It's like a tiny art studio. It's really small. So sometimes I'll grab all my stuff from the art studio, but then I'll go in the dining room because there's a patio door. So there's more light. So then I will start working in the dining room. And then for 2 weeks, there's just paint and stuff everywhere in the dining room. And then if I have to process order, but then the dining room is busy because I've been painting there, then I go in the living room. And then there's just print and shipping material everywhere in the living room. So the entire house is basically a giant art studio at this point.
So there's one room for you to live in.
Yeah, I don't go, it's my bedroom and the bathroom. So the one bathroom there's nothing in there, I don't think. And in my bedroom, I don't bring art in there. But the guest bedroom, the dining room, and the living room is just art stuff everywhere. Has
your work-life balance improved since you left the day job? Because I know for a while you were working 2 jobs at the same time, effectively.
I would like to say yes, but it depends. There's and like I said before, being a full-time artist is also like running a small business. Yeah. So I still need some kind of routine or structure in my day. So I tend to plan my day. Like in the morning, I'll do emails for a couple hours, just getting back to galleries. There's always something, like being a guest on a podcast. There's always someone, like students who have questions for you. So I try to do emails for a couple hours every morning. Then I'll try to paint depending on my deadlines. And there's one day a week where I process everything that I need to ship in my shop. So I do all of that myself. And then I do one day a week where I do finances and min stuff because, taxes are a real thing. So I need to, sort my transactions, see what will be a tax expense at the end of the year and all this stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to do on a daily basis. The flexibility that I have now that I didn't before is if I'm really not in the mood for anything one day, if I really need a rest day, I take it.
Okay, that's good.
So it's good. But when I have deadlines, do I work 14 hours in a day? Of course I work 14 hours in a day for like 4 days in a row if I need to get work out there. So, I work less, but I work more when it comes to other stuff.
But I think one of the important differences is this is your passion and your choice rather than something that you feel compelled to do because you need to make a paycheck or whatever. Has COVID changed the way that you work at all? Like, obviously you work with models a lot and do, photo shoots. Has that affected your ability to do that?
I think the entire world is a different place with COVID. There's a lot of change in my just basic routine. Like, I'm someone who loves to wake up and go to the gym for an hour. And that is purely for my mental health. Like, I just like the gym. It just release a lot of good hormones for me and put me in a good mood. So I don't have that anymore. So that actually changed my routine. Obviously, the way we show art is a bit different. I think COVID did bring a lot of opportunities when it comes to online content. I feel like suddenly everybody was just so thirsty for online content, which is a great thing, I think, for the art world. I think it's so great that we can connect with other artists and other galleries and see art from all over the world. So now that we're pushing that more, I think that's actually a great benefit long-term to the art scene. But yeah, it's different. Like, I miss going to the art store to buy my material. Like, I need to buy everything online. Like, same as shipping. Sometimes something as silly as, oh, I'm going to the post office to drop off my stuff. Now it's like a pickup on my front porch. So I do miss those just really basic interactions that just made up my full-time lifestyle. So I do miss those little things. So it did change my mood, I guess. I don't even know how else to say it. It's like, it's fine. I'll be fine, but it's not great, but it's fine, but I'll be fine. Like, it's just, I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I'm just trying to adapt and live one day at a time and really focus on, okay, today went well. We made the best that we could out of today. So that needs to be my focus, and I just need to stick to that for now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just the like, to your point, the subtle effects that people's moods are now bleeding into their artwork, and how maybe the artwork is changed in subtle ways that maybe you didn't notice or recognize at the time. Mm-hmm. That'll be interesting. So let's talk about your new show. You talked about showing art. The show's titled Sweet Dreams and opens on April 24th at Bain Art Gallery. And I think that's in their new location, right? Where are they at right now? Is it Melbourne?
Yes, yeah, they're still in Melbourne. So that's actually very exciting because Australia is pretty much open. So it's kind of the first work that people will be able to see in person.
Interesting.
In the past year. I mean, people have been seeing my work, but everybody has been seeing my work online and virtually and stuff like that. So I'm kind of really happy that some people will be able to see some of my work in real life, because even if I'm a true believer in, like I said before, online content, I also believe that it's a great experience to see art in person. Like, I love going to art galleries and art museum and just appreciate texture and brush strokes and all those super fine little details that you will never be able to see on a computer screen. So I'm really happy that some people will be able to see my work in person. So I've been working on some pieces for that. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is going to be a couple weeks after this show is scheduled to debut. So what can you share about the new body of work? Like, what are some of the themes you're working with?
It's an interesting body of work because it was a bit of a transition. The past couple of months, I would say, I find myself pulled a little bit more towards an abstraction version of my work. So I'm really trying to, like we talked about, push transparencies and stuff like that. So the last few pieces that I've done are playing with that a little bit more, and also introducing a lot of gradients, because it's just something I'm into right now. I'm just loving painting gradients. So there's a little bit more of that. So it's an interesting show because I started working on it months and months ago. So there's pieces that are more what I would call traditional when it comes to my work. Like, they're very traditional Alex Garant pieces. And there's pieces that are transitioning into this kind of abstraction-ish vibe that I'm into. It's still very much a portrait. It's still very much duplication of elements, but there's just more of it, a bit more complexity to it. So I think it's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be a bit of a, you can see a transition within the show itself.
Yeah, some of the pieces that you've been posting on your social media, it almost looks like the characters are like vibrating faster, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, that's the kind of visual aesthetic it looks like. It looks like they're kind of losing their material or whatever, maybe just vibrating or in between dimensions or whatever. That's the sort of impression that it gives me. Was that the intent, or is it just more of making it just more abstract in general?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to push concepts further and not limit myself as much. I think sometimes I have the tendency to make sure that my work is approachable to some level. And in the past couple months, I find myself not putting that constraint on myself and just pushing it a bit more and just be more comfortable with putting something more complex out there and just hope that some people will get it if you want. So I think it's just that process of accepting where my own creative mind wants to take me and just not keeping myself where I was.
Oh, very cool. How many pieces do you think there'll be?
I'm gonna have probably 10 oil paintings and 6 little studies that will be mixed media. So it's mostly going to be just pencil and some watercolor. So I wanted to put some of those in the show because I think it's part of the experience to actually see the creation process. So I always like to put a few of those in a show. So I think that's what it's going to be.
Are you still working on it, or are you mostly done?
I'm mostly done. I still need to do a lot of varnishing and, the good part of hanging hardware and all this good stuff. I would like to put a couple more pieces, but I just have to be very, very conscious of time because I'm in Canada and the show is in Australia. And right now with COVID, shipping is a bit inconsistent. So I have to really take into consideration shipping times when I do a solo in Australia. Because the minimum I want to give myself is like 3 weeks for shipping.
Yeah, and so looking at the time here, that's coming up. It's only a couple of weeks, I guess.
That is correct.
No pressure.
No, those 14 hours a day, they're happening right now.
Is there a particular piece in the show that challenged you more than the rest?
I think because this show actually include pieces that are more Alex Garant traditional and pieces that are kind of pushing the duplication of elements. They were those first pieces where I pushed it a little bit further. So they were uncomfortable to create because it's a new concept and I had to work on it differently. I really had to look at my reference the whole time I was working on the actual painting, which usually once my sketch is down, I feel very kind of comfortable just painting. But for those new paintings, I really had to constantly look back at my reference to be sure that it made sense. It was really hard for me. It was just very challenging, way more challenging. But that's the beauty of it, right? It's that you can challenge yourself. So it's an enjoyable process. So I think the pieces that I enjoy the most are the one where I can see in the work that I was being challenged.
For sure. Do you think you'll be able to make it out there for the opening?
No. With the COVID restriction and coming back to Canada from a flight, you need to go in one of those COVID hotels in Canada to quarantine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you fly and you come back to Canada right now, the government sends you to those COVID hotels and it's at your own fees and it's $2,000.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I'd never heard of that before. That's interesting.
Yeah. So you pay $2,000 to go in a kind of COVID jail until the government tells you that you had enough negative tests to finish your quarantine at home. It's just not, it's complicated and,
No, I don't blame you. That sounds terrible.
It's not ideal. I think it is. I haven't experienced it, but I don't want to. So.
Okay. No, I don't blame you. What does like the rest of 2021 look like for you once you have this all wrapped up?
Yeah, so I have quite a few group shows lined up. I could probably I list them on my website because I can't remember all of them. But I always try to have about maybe 10 group shows in the year. So I have a few things happening with Think Space and Spoke Art Gallery, and something with Arch Enemy Arts in Philly in the fall as well. So very busy, lots of gallery shows.
Nice.
Yeah, that's going to be my year. Just lots of gallery shows and just creating a lot of original paintings.
Any new print releases coming up that you'd want to put on people's radar?
So I will have a print release with Think Space Gallery of It's a Jungle Out There. Really soon. I have them here, so I need to just sign them and ship them back. So that's going to be happening soon via Think Space. And I will probably have 2 limited prints for the show opening via Baynard as well. So we'll do a couple prints with the show when they open.
Very cool. So where can people find you online so they can stay up to date with the latest?
Ooh, all right. You can stalk me on the internet at my website is alexgarant.com, and all of my social media is Alex Garant Art. Yeah, I have the Instagram, I have the Twitter, I have the TikTok.
Are you on TikTok now? That's like the new thing, right?
I have been on. It's funny because I was on TikTok when TikTok first started, and then, but it wasn't picking up. It was really early. So I kind of left for a while, and then it reappeared, and I was like, oh shoot, I should have stayed on it. So I came back, but I'm enjoying it. I have to say, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a TikTok scroller. Like, I love to just scroll through TikTok. It's awesome.
You just get lost in it. I mean, you'll spend you'll look up at the clock and be like, oh my God, I just wasted an hour.
And then, you know what? It's so great though, because people are so funny.
Oh,
and people
great,
are really putting themselves out there. And it's really the era of content right now, or people creating their own content. And I appreciate it, and I totally enjoy it.
That's fun. It's fun. Okay, last question. This is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh, you should have told me you were going to ask me that because, oh no, that's a big question. Oh, I can't answer that. I can send you a list after, like a list, like, do everybody answer this question? You should have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Question.
Who's the top of that list then? I mean, just
like, look at me. I'm looking at my phone right now. But like, I know too many artists, and I also need to review all of the artists that you had on the show to be sure that you haven't had that person yet. I'm a huge art nerd. Like, I follow so many artists. Like, I collect a lot of art. And have you had Casey Weldon on the show yet?
No, I haven't.
Well, there you go. I'll say Casey because
go.
I've one of his painting in front of me. But I'm such an art nerd. Like, I follow so many artists online, and I try to collect as much art as possible. And I'm
awesome.
So I'm so overwhelmed about this question because I'm like, I love so many people. Like, I love so many artists.
Awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Well, Casey Weldon's a good choice. You're actually the second person that's mentioned Casey, so perfect.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. He's great. He's a great artist.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
All right, sweet. So we'll cut there. What'd you think? So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Alex. I really liked what Alex had to say about her perspective about rejection. Rather than looking at a no as some statement about the quality of your work, instead look at it as just an improper fit. That drastically changes the entire conversation, right? From, trying to change your work to fit into some perceived needs of a gallery, instead making it more about the journey to find your unique segment of the art world, where your work does fit and is appreciated. By approaching it with that perspective, the no's weren't nearly as defeating, and she ended up finding her community through a lot of persistence and hard work. Her show at Baynard Gallery sounds pretty awesome, and I've really enjoyed the teases she's already shared on social media. Like I mentioned to her, before we even chatted, I had already been looking at her social media and seen, this new evolution of her work and was fascinated by it. And it felt to me, it felt almost like the characters sort of increased their speed of vibration or became more out of sync with this dimension or whatever. But it was super interesting to find out that these changes actually stemmed from her own desire to push her alla prima technique even further, to see how she could, gain even more transparency with it, which sounds incredibly hard to do, I have to say. The show titled Sweet Dreams will debut a couple weeks after this episode should come out, April 24th at Baynard's new location. Reach out to the gallery to register your interest and request a preview for the show. So thanks again to Alex for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's new Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. As always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.